Welcome to the Monday, September 29th edition of the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm Joe Bartel. You can follow me on Twitter at JB Fantasy Sports. Alongside me every Monday, Jake Letarski at RotoJake. We are two grieving Packer fans right now who had to suffer through 4 hours of a tie ball game that Matt LaFleur absolutely couched away. So if you're watching live on YouTube and you see our frustrated or bags in our eyes, just understand that we're grieving, right? Because this is supposed to be an easy win. At least that's what we were told all week. And of course, the Cowboys came to play and the Packers did not, as it usually seems to be in these scenarios. Enough about our football teams being dumb. Let's talk about the Week 5 waiver wire pickups. And I guess, unfortunately, for a lot of folks out there, it's a bit of a shallow waiver wire week. Now, at least we have new running backs to discuss. Actually, one I think is going to be a very prominent guy moving forward in Woody Marks, who is our cover boy for today's show. So we're going to get to those running backs, a few of the receivers with unfortunate injuries as well. And fortunately, or more likely unfortunately, we have our first set of bye weeks with 4 teams on bye and crucial ones of that too. So going to be a lot to talk about on the show today. Lots of things to go over. Of course, we always do our top 5 waiver wire pickups. And let's kick things off, Jake, right away with the guy I think is most akin to like last year's Tyrone Tracy in Woody Marks, who ends up getting a big bump with the Texans in that dominant win over the Titans.
Yeah, Woody Marks, no matter which way you cut it, is the number one waiver pickup in all of fantasy football this week. The availability is there. He's only around 30% rostered on Yahoo, and it looks like we have a serious role here. He was always kind of a late-round flyer in drafts, someone that we thought would maybe be a pass-catching back at best, but then, of course, we get the Joe Mixon news in late August, and we really don't have any kind of update on Joe Mixon. And whether he comes back at all. So for now, we just have to assume that this is the Nick Chubb and Woody Marks backfield. And, of course, Marks, for the first time all season, outsnapped Nick Chubb. He was out there for 40 snaps compared to 30 for Chubb. The season-high 18% target share for Woody Marks, so he's getting use in the passing game. And the end result, of course, was 21 touches, 119 yards, 2 touchdowns. It was just under 28 PPR points. A true breakout game in every sense of the word. And I do think that this is sustainable because clearly you have someone that's making an impact on the game as opposed to Chubb, who is just eating carries and not doing a whole lot with them. Chubb's on his 4th or 5th knee by now. So it's been rough, but Marks broke out. He looks like he's the real deal. The Texans offense needs a spark from somebody like him. Mm-hmm. And the upcoming schedule isn't too bad. He's at Baltimore, who is 32nd against opposing running backs in PPR form or half PPR formats, and then he has a bye week followed by Seattle, San Francisco, Denver, and Jacksonville. So in every sense, Woody Marks is your top overall pick. It just becomes a discussion at this point of how much FAAB do you use on him. I think you use your top waiver priority if he's out there, and I want to say about 75% of your FAAB budget as well.
75%. Okay, yeah. So the people that are watching along live, I normally post this in conjunction with the waiver wire article. It goes on the site for RotoWire. It's awesome. Got a ton of you guys listening and watching that last week, which was great. I think I put it like 35% or 27%. I guess I'm a bit more conservative with this. You're right. Woody Marks only rostered in 30% of leagues, so ideally or most likely a lot of people are kind of dealing with this. I am upset at myself that I wasn't pushing Woody Marks more in the article and our conversations of the past couple of weeks because I liked Nick Chubb. The Texans offensive line has not been very good. Overall, the Texans offense has not been good. And it feels so similar now in hindsight to the way we were talking about Tyrone Tracy last year. Giants aren't very good. Offensive line isn't very good. Devin Singletary was the Nick Chubb in this example, and Singletary was okay. Gets banged up in that instance, and Tyrone Tracy really never looks back. You could have used Tyrone Tracy as a running back too, basically all season, no matter the adverse circumstances that the Giants were dealing with. And I think the same sort of scenario goes for Woody Marks, but now add that Woody Marks is the obvious pass catcher. I put in the article that you'll likely need, or you'll see the Texans use the backs to block because the offensive line is so bad. But in the instances like we saw against the Titans on Sunday, where Marks is the pass catcher, that's just the full complement. So if we're saying he could be a good running back, he could be the good pass catcher, and we think the Texans get slightly better throughout the year. Yep. You're right. It is no brainer. I won't go 75% of my budget. Like that to me is more of the Cam Scadaboos and Trey Benson's from last week. But sure. I do think Woody Marks is very clearly in must roster territory and probably needs to be closer to like 70% rostered in the same sort of way we're describing with 30% on Yahoo earlier.
Yeah, I guess a more logical, rational approach would sure be 35, 40% of your FAAB budget. But I do feel like heading into buys this week, with 4 teams on bye, we've got the Falcons, Bears, Packers and Steelers. I mean, the Jacobs rostered everywhere, Bijan Robinson rostered everywhere. You're going to have to replace this week. I think if you actually want Woody Marks, you're going to have to make a bid of that caliber here. And back to the pass catching. This was a blowout of the Titans, pretty much in any sense. The Titans are 0-4. Don't look much, not optimism with the Titans at all. And so the team high in targets was 6, and that was a tie between Nico Collins and Dalton Schultz. I know I gave Christian Kirk in his return a little bit of love last week, but he only ended up with 4 targets. Woody Marks actually had 5, so basically second or third on the team, I guess, if you will, in targets, and that's significant. And I think that continues to get better as the game script isn't as much in the favor of the Texans. I think that only helps the case for Woody Marks. So he's definitely on the rise. I think you're going to need a sizable FAAB bid if you want him. And the way that running backs have been going, we had Benson and Scadaboo last week, but those guys were right around 50% or 60% even rostered. So it's not like you were able to dump that FAAB. I think Marks is a guy that you could possibly dump that sizable amount of FAAB on because, again, it's only the end of week 4 here. We got 2 Monday night games tonight. There's a lot of utility for the rest of the season. And Marks, again, there's the Joe Mixon question lingering in the background, but we haven't had an update on the RotoWire site on Joe Mixon since August 27th, and we're looking for this kind of stuff every day. There's a Texans beat writer who looks at the local newspaper every day for this kind of thing. And there just isn't that much about Joe Mixon. And, of course, the last we did have on him, the GM was non-committal on whether he'd actually play this season at all. I know you had your little birds or sources, if you want, that that tentatively said,
would agree with that, yes.
Play all year. Whatever we want to call that. But so far it's looking like that because you'd think there'd be an update, right? He's on the IR. And
he would be eligible to return starting next week. Like if this was any sort of cadence that is normal to the injury thing, right?
But if that were even close to happening, we would have heard something.
Correct.
He would have started practicing. His practice window would be open.
Right.
None of that's happened so far. So I think we almost have to operate as if Mixon won't be back. And even if he does come back, if it's late in the season, how effective is he going to be at less than 100%? He's still on the right side of 30, but not by much. I mean, I think this is a Woody Marks backfield pretty much for the entirety of the year. Now, there are going to be some situations where Chubb probably vultures a goal line carrier too, and that'll be frustrating. But in your PPR leagues, I think Marks is a home run ad for this week. He's clear number 1. And I didn't even have to think about this. I knew by 1:30, 2 o'clock in the afternoon yesterday who our cover boy was going to be this week.
Again, I think back to Tyrone Tracy from last year, it's the same sort of example. A supposed pass catching running back getting more involved can still do that within the offense. And even if the offense isn't very good, the volume that they're going to see over the other guys in that backfield, that's what you're looking at. A running back to rest of season, possibly for Woody Marks. I agree with you, and people on SiriusXM on Angel Fire Radio on Saturday were asking about it. I ignored it then. I had somebody, I do a weekly call with a Utah sports station, so he was mentioning that too. I didn't even think about it then. I'm kicking myself that I wasn't more aggressive. And I'm with you. Maybe I need to be more aggressive, at least from a waiver wire perspective. I want to use him, like you mentioned, against the Ravens, who right now are the league's worst team in terms of against fantasy opposing running backs too. So something to keep in mind. We do top 5 for both of us, so effectively top 10 lists. I would say Woody Marks is 1, 2, 5. Literally the only guy I really want to have this waiver wire period is Woody Marks, and I think that makes it frustrating given the 4 teams on bye, like you mentioned too. So we'll go down the rest of this. You have Kendre Miller listed number 2, and I will be honest with you, Jake. I have a feeling I know where we're going to go with this, so maybe I'll let you explain why, but I don't think I have Kendre Miller nearly as highly ranked as you might have.
Exactly. So here's my deal with Kendre Miller, and I knew this was going to be spicy coming in, and I knew that in terms of making a top 5, I will say Kenneth Gainwell, who had a big breakout game early in the morning, if you were up for that. He's only 22% roster on Yahoo. And I think a lot of lists are going to put Kenny Gainwell near the top. I have him at number 3 for what that's worth, not to skip around too much here. But the thing with Kenny Gainwell is he has a bye week coming up, so he cannot help you. And he really only had this RB1 role because Jaylen Warren was a surprise inactive early on Sunday morning there in Ireland. So, he's got after the bye, you have to assume that Jaylen Warren is healthy and Kenneth Gainwell will be back to his regular role. We did learn one thing, though, in that when Warren is out, Gainwell is the de facto RB1. They're not necessarily going to give Caleb Johnson more opportunities. Yeah, he got
more work, right? Yeah.
But he was barely involved. It was Gainwell getting the meaningful touches. Gainwell, 77% snap share, 72% route share, 27% target share. So Gainwell was getting the Warren role, basically all packed into one. But I did not put him at number 2 on my list because, like you said, he's got the bye. He can't help you. And when they're back from the bye, Warren should be around. And even after the bye, you're versus Cleveland, at Cincinnati, versus Green Bay, versus Indy, at the Chargers. So outside of that Bengals matchup, 4 of those 5 are top 10 defenses against running backs in half PPR formats here. So the upcoming schedule, even after the bye, is tough. That's why I put Gainwell down at number 3. Now, again, I kind of dodged the Kendre Miller question here to begin with, but let me talk a little bit about Kendre Miller and why I have him at number 2 overall. 1, only 5% rostered, so he's available everywhere, pretty much. He's someone that if your Marks bid doesn't go through, if you don't have top waiver wire priority and you still need a running back, I'm looking at Kendre Miller for a couple of reasons. First off, this game against the Bills wasn't a blowout by any means. Nope. So when you look, it was close for much of it until the very end when it wasn't. So when you look at the distribution here between him and Alvin Kamara, Kamara still carried the ball 15 times for 70 yards. Kendre Miller carried the ball 11 times for 65 yards and a score. So Kendre Miller is getting involved despite Kamara clearly being there and being the RB1. But of course, what I'm thinking about, what I think a lot of people are thinking about, you saw it all over X the other day. Obviously, the Saints are not going anywhere this season, and Alvin Kamara is an actual asset that they might be able to turn into draft picks. And there are some running back needy teams in the NFL. And I think Alvin Kamara would be a target potentially for teams that are looking for a running back as long as the Saints have a reasonable asking price. If Kamara goes, granted, it's still the Saints offense. It's still a Spencer Rattler-led offense. You can't expect a ton of points. But Kendre Miller would be a pretty clear RB1 in that situation, and he would be a guy that leads off our waiver wire show as the number 1 pick if the backfield suddenly becomes his. I mean, you look at the rest of that backfield, Devin Neal, Velus Jones, not a whole lot there.
Neal's good. I'm going to continue to stand on that. Devin Neal is good, but you're right. I mean, if it is the scenario that Kamara gets traded, it would be Kendre Miller's show, and then Devin Neal kind of mixing in. Velus Jones is just a pass catcher or whatever.
Yes, exactly. So anyway, what I'm saying is, maybe he's not a plug and play start immediate guy, but Kendre Miller would be. It's get ahead of this before, it would be like if we said Woody Marks in our quick hits the last couple of weeks.
Yes.
And now all of a sudden it's Woody Marks week. Everyone, you're going to have to pay a huge price. Kendre Miller flies a little bit under the radar and could very well help you. I mean, he's 23 years old. He was a 3rd round pick. It's his 3rd year in the league. He's got the draft pedigree. He's got experience, but also without a ton of tread on his tires. The Saints could lean on him to finish out the year, and he could be, just based on volume alone, could be such a huge back. So at only 5% rostered, I'm thinking this week is the time to grab him. Or, I get it. You're going to have some tough bye week things. Maybe you don't have the roster capacity to pick up somebody who has to sit on your bench for a couple of weeks. But put him on your watch list. Put him on your radar. And if you have dead weight on your bench, if you can cut Nabers even this week, go ahead and grab him, because I think that Kendre Miller can be an asset. He is somebody we're going to talk about again at some point down the road here.
All right, so I was projecting this sort of conversation in the article. I put this out on the RotoWire site, which should be published here momentarily. Again, we'll have this video in conjunction, both in the article, but if you're just watching live, I think YouTube 15 gets you 15% off RotoWire site. And go ahead and read that article up on the site now. I understand the premise of like wish casting Alvin Kamara to a different team. The Chiefs were the popular one I heard last week, given all the need, and I think they do. The Chiefs do have a need at running back overall. All right, the Chiefs have right now currently $3.5 million in cap space. I believe, and I used to be really, really good with the cap stuff, and now with the void years added on, I'm not nearly as good as following how this ends going.
But fake. Every team finds a way around it every time. That's kind of the mentality.
There are things that are not. And in this case, the Saints would take on $12.5 million in dead money if they were to trade Alvin Kamara, more if they were to outright cut him. We had the same conversation last year with Kamara, and I bought it more until they gave him that 2-year extension that add those additional void years on. So, like, It's one thing for a team A to have, I think, somewhere in the name of $8 to $10 million in cap space to take Kamara on their team. Another thing entirely for that team to then pay the draft capital for the Saints to take on $12.5 million in dead cap. Mm-hmm. I don't know many scenarios that make sense. The Chiefs do not. So, like, if we go down the list, and there are a lot of teams. I agree with you, Jake.
I mean, Saints could eat some money to take the picks, right?
That's not how that works. They will eat $12.5 million no matter what if he was to be traded. That's how this. Like, you can't. With all their dumb stuff that they've done with the contracts over the years, it does not matter. Now, the Saints, I don't know how much cap space they have. They could maybe open up more to take a better draft pick, but that's the whole point of this. You have to pay the Saints enough draft capital-wise for them to consider taking $12.5 million in dead cap next year. What is that? Is that a second-round pick? Is that a third-round pick?
What if Kamara decides he's had enough and wants to trade anyway,
I mean, they can acquiesce to that, but they gave him a contract extension last year to satiate that sort of thing. That was the whole reason they signed him there. So if you are picking up Kendre Miller in waivers right now because you want to have a good back in the event that Alvin Kamara gets injured, totally fine with that. But if you are trying to get Kendre Miller to speculate on the instance that Alvin Kamara gets traded, someone needs to explain to me how it would work. Because I financially don't know how that makes sense for the teams that would go ahead and acquire him, and nobody's talking about that. We're just talking about, the Saints suck, so Alvin Kamara's going to get traded. It doesn't work like that right now in the NFL. I don't think it is.
Fair enough. And I mean, it's not like Alvin Kamara has been infallible from an injury perspective. He's played mostly full seasons, but he's missed a couple games in a handful of years. So, there's reason for that too. I'm just thinking, like, when I had to pick my number 2 after Woody Marks, is it Gainwell? Is it Kendre Miller? It's like Gainwell he peaked in value this week, and it's probably going down unless Warren gets hurt again. Miller has some ceiling, and that's what I did. I think you can get him for next to nothing, and there's a ton of ceiling here in a variety of scenarios that can happen. And teams are RB needy. Maybe it doesn't happen this week. But hey, even if it's a desperation thing, and you need to start a running back, it looks like Miller is getting mixed in.
Exactly.
There's 5-6 points there anyway. If you had to start him with just a tremendous ceiling.
So that's why I wanted to make sure I explain my point that if we're just saying you're picking up Miller because he gives you 5-6 point floor in the same way that Kenny Gainwell did when Jalen Warren was healthy, fine. Uncle Ted mentions Jerome Ford as a Chief trade. We talked about that last week. I still believe that's a perfect landing spot for what the Chiefs want to do and how Jerome Ford can be used, especially with Judkins and Dylan Sampson on the roster. But if the answer is not trade for Alvin Kamara or somebody else, I actually think, and this is why he's number 3 on my waiver wire list for this week, Brashard Smith, the rookie, I think it's 7th round pick for the Chiefs, got some utility against the Ravens in that massive win for KC. And more importantly, I think he's kind of like the Jerick McKinnon. If you remember from a couple of years ago when Jerick McKinnon was basically a league winner during the fantasy playoffs. We know the Chiefs like to use their rookies as the season progresses. Think back to Rashee Rice 2 years ago, Xavier Worthy last year. There might be a necessity to have Brashard Smith be more of a factor, but I do not believe that the Chiefs are going to be a postseason wrecking ball like they have been for the whole past decade now at this point, or at least half decade from Mahomes. Brashard Smith is going to be that team's Jerick McKinnon. And I don't know if it happens this week, but I'm not making the same mistake again that I did with Woody Marks.
Yeah.
I liked Woody Marks as a prospect. I thought Nick Chubb was going to be fine. I mean, we drafted Nick Chubb in a lot of different places, especially best ball, but that Woody Marks could be that guy eventually. That's the same exact damn thing here with Brashard Smith over Isaiah Pacheco, over Kareem Hunt. And I just am going to keep making that statement that I'm not making this mistake again. I won't make this Woody Marks thing again.
I'm totally confused by the Chiefs' backfield usage. I don't know if Pacheco isn't 100% or if they want to conserve him. But I always thought Pacheco was the better back, and I don't understand the Kareem Hunt why he's getting as much work as he has been. And I'll admit, Brashard Smith wasn't really on my radar leading up to the show, but you do make a good case for him. I looked at the usage. He played 18 snaps, which is more than he has all year. His previous high was 8 snaps in weeks 1 and 3, and he did get 2 carries in week 3, and he got 4 carries this week. So it's interesting, but yeah, the risk of eventually expanding Pacheco's usage, which I think has to happen, and possibly bringing in another body makes it enough to at least leave him off my top 5. But I do have some really high roster guys that are real close to the threshold in my top 5. So I know you like to be a little more aggressive than that. And that helps us get a couple different diverse lists. I like
that's the deeper leagues I'm looking at.
Yeah, I'm not quite ready to buy into. It's such a long-term stash. It would have to be like in your fishbowl or a really crazy deep league. to just grab this 7th round pick and assume he continues to get a role. I'm not quite there yet.
Well, let me build on some deep plays as well, too. Again, I mean, we're listing our top 5 players, but I think really it's just Woody Marks is one that we're going out aggressively getting. And I might stash a Brashard Smith in certain places. I actually like him more than Kenny Gainwell, for example, being on bye and then Jalen Warren out, or like I would assume Jalen Warren back. That's like I the way I want my bench to be. I want the lottery tickets, and I don't think Kenny Gainwell ever qualifies in that same way. I like Kendre Miller to a certain extent because the Saints could theoretically get an offer that they trade Alvin Kamara away. Like, I'm not saying it can't. I just need to know how the math works, and nobody's recognizing that when they're talking about Kendre Miller in the event Kamara gets traded. The other part of this would be a guy like Isaiah Bond, with Cedric Tillman leaving that game that lost to Lions with a hamstring injury. Isaiah Bond was a UDFA. There was legal reasons as to why. You can go ahead and look it up if you want to. He also ran a pitiful 40-yard dash at the combine. He was injured during that. Isaiah Bond in college was supposed to be like a 4.2 speed. I think he runs a 4.7 in the combine. I don't know if Bond is actually that fast, but he definitely isn't that slow. So if Cedric Tillman is out, Isaiah Bond, at least we saw last week, benefits in that scenario as the pass catcher. Dylan Gabriel, theoretically, knocking down the door for Joe Flacco as the starting quarterback for the Browns. I don't think that helps Isaiah Bond, but we in today's NFL, I mean, if there's a lot of volume passing-wise, I think Dylan Gabriel probably could project to have a little bit of that the way that Flacco has. I don't mind it. So again, in deeper leagues, a Scott Fishbowl example is perfect one. Isaiah Bond's one I'm monitoring.
Yeah, and you mentioned when we were chatting before the show how Tillman, it's not just a hamstring injury that caused him to leave the game. He was limited in practice this week by both hand and hip issues. So you just banged up across the board here. And I think we do know, based on the data, that Isaiah Bond will be wide receiver 2 to Judy over there. I'm looking at his snaps. The last 2 weeks, 43 and 36 snaps. Less snaps this week, but they also, as a team, played less snaps. And of course, Tillman only played 15. And who went in when Tillman went out was actually a lot of Jamari Thrash, but we're not going that deep for fantasy. Bond, yeah, sure. Bond is something in deeper leagues. Maybe they can get some quarterback play spark. Flacco did not look good again. I mean, out of 7 of the last 8 Joe Flacco quarters have been horrific for the Browns. Of course, the one good one had to come against the Packers, but he's not doing it. And at some point, we got to see what we have here if you're the Browns. So I can buy it. But before you go hunting for Isaiah Bond, I did have a few other receivers that are a little bit higher rostered, but still pretty readily available here. And I think I have to start that with Romeo Doubs of the Packers. Now, he just had his career game in an absolute shootout against the worst defense against quarterbacks and wide receivers. So, yeah, you have to take that into account. But if anything, that game emphasizes and solidifies what I said earlier in the season. I think it was on our week 2 show or even our week 1 show where Romeo Doubs is wide receiver 1 in Green Bay. Granted, yes, they want to spread the ball around a lot, and they will continue to spread the ball around a lot. But Jaden Reed, of course, he's going to be out for a handful more weeks. I know Christian Watson might be creeping up on a return a lot earlier than we all expected, but Romeo Doubs really is the man there. And the 3 touchdowns shows that, yes, Love looks at him in the red zone. One of them was a bigger play, but a couple of them were just like regular slant RPOs where Love decided to pull the ball up and hit Doubs on the quick slant. And Doubs' hands so far this year have been reliable. So he's only 40% rostered in Yahoo leagues. I think if you're looking for that Wan'Dale Robinson replacement,
Malik Nabers replacement, ironically, probably is Wan'Dale Robinson.
Thank you. Yeah, exactly. I was getting ahead of myself because I did have Wan'Dale Robinson number 5 on the list. Yeah, obviously, a very unfortunate situation. Malik Nabers. I don't know if the team's confirmed the torn ACL yet, but it's pretty much set in stone.
Yeah, I'm annoyed that we have to even do this thing where he's not.
Central time, but Malik Nabers torn ACL. And you have to look for someone. So it's funny the week that people actually need a wide receiver replacement. Our last 3 shows have been wide receiver heavy with no running backs. It's funny the week people actually need a receiver replacement. It's the week of the running back here. So, but yeah, I got to throw in here Wan'Dale Robinson just because he's 49% rostered in Yahoo formats. I think he is just as good of a pickup. Now, the stat line here for Wan'Dale Robinson this week wasn't necessarily great. And with Jackson Dart taking over at quarterback, the Giants are going to run the football at a ridiculously high proportion. Obviously, Scadaboo's getting his touches. And I think Jackson Dart had 10 rushes and I think only 3 or 4 of them were scrambled. I think 6 of them, at least looking
Like
at
designed
the
runs, yeah.
thread this morning, that he does a good Monday morning stat dump. He watched the film, and 6 of those 10 runs were designed runs for Jackson Dart. So that's interesting. They're going to run the ball a ton here. And Wan'Dale Robinson, Malik Nabers left that game. Wan'Dale Robinson ends up only with 5 targets, catches 3 of them for 14 yards. Obviously doesn't score. This is almost unique game flow here for the Giants. Nobody expected them to go and win this game and play from ahead. I don't think them playing from ahead is going to be super common this year. So Jackson Dart, they're going to have to pass more. Wan'Dale Robinson obviously had that really huge game against the Cowboys earlier this year. Who doesn't have a huge game against the Cowboys defense here? But we established a ceiling with that, and now there's room for a wide receiver 1 here in this situation. And I think Wan'Dale Robinson, because we have a ceiling established, is the guy over Darius Slayton. Darius Slayton's going to be right at the edge of that line. He's going to have a lot of 5 for 50 weeks probably, which has some fantasy utility as bye weeks go. But Wan'Dale Robinson is the pick, and that kind of rounds out my top 5 there with the 3 running backs. And then I'm going Dobbs, and then I'm going Wan'Dale Robinson.
Yeah, and I'll add Jackson Dart to my list as well, too. If you need a streaming quarterback this week against the Saints, you mentioned that schedule upcoming. 2 games against the Eagles, the Broncos, and Niners. I think it's either before a bye or an actual favorable opponent. You can really only play Jackson Dart this week, but if the rushing floor is going to be there, if he's going to give you 6 designed rushing attempts plus more, that makes Jackson Dart easily in that quarterback 1 tier, and against the Saints defense, I'm completely fine with. You had talked about there might be volume in that passing attack. I would agree. Maybe game script against those Eagles or the Niner game, or whatever, the Broncos, will necessitate Jackson Dart having to throw the ball.
We had to see Baker chase the Eagles, all week, and that.
I would just argue that I don't think Brian Dable wants that to happen. I think that Jackson Dart will get exposed if that occurs. So if it's Jackson Dart not attempting a lot of passes, them being safe, the Eagles doing the same, or the Niners doing the same, it might be a scenario where there just isn't volume despite the Giants trailing often, and that's like the worst case place to be for fantasy. So it's why I'm not rostering Jackson Dart rest of season. If you need a streamer this week, and again you might, with Caleb Williams and Jordan Love and Michael Penix all on bye, I get that entirely. But I'm not spending FAAB as if I'm getting Jackson Dart for the rest of the season or the foreseeable future. It is just a
exactly.
FAAB for this week.
If you follow the show, we after we hit our top pickups overall, we go to quarterbacks and we do is anyone standalone single quarterback league, okay? And then after that, we go to the streaming options, and then after that, we go to the the quick hitter 2 quarterback league type options. I didn't actually put Jackson Dart in the standalone single QB section. I limited him just to the streaming section because of, like you said, this week, cake matchup at New Orleans. He should, if anything, he'll get similar game flow as he did last week, because the Saints haven't been able to really hang with anybody this year. And so that's great. But then afterwards, like you said, versus Philly, at Denver, at Philly, it's a pretty ugly schedule after that. So even if you're picking him up for the Saints and he has a decent game, gets you 20 points or whatnot, I don't see, it would be really hard to continue starting him after that. Again, maybe he tries to play catch-up mode in some of these games where they're behind, but I don't see it beyond this week. He's merely a streaming option for me.
Yeah, before we get to more of the quarterbacks, because there are a few, and we, of course, goofed, I think, as did everyone on Geno Smith last week. Let's get a word from our sponsors, Vivid Seats. NFL is, of course, back, and don't just sit on the couch. Lock in your seat this season with the Vivid Seats app, where you'll score the lowest price tickets guaranteed. That's right, Vivid Seats is introducing their new lowest price guarantee, so you know you're getting the best deal all season long. Seriously. Try to find a cheaper ticket. It's not going to happen. Every rushing yard, red zone pass, jaw-dropping play, Packers defense exposed every single time. You can see that live and in person. Here's the kicker. When you buy with the Vivid Seats app, you rack up rewards and free credits. That's your personal home field advantage. And if that's not enough, Vivid Seats is offering you $20 off your first $200 ticket price purchase with promo code ROTOWIRE. That's RotoWire, ROTOWIRE. So suit up with this NFL season and download the Vivid Seats app to get the best deal in the game with the best prices. Terms and conditioning apply. All right, so back to that streaming quarterback part of things. Jackson Dart makes my list, given the rushing floor and what he'll do for the Saints. Tua is also a good matchup, though, against the Panthers, and I call them more Hyde than Jekyll. The Panthers being a just not very good franchise outside of one game against the Falcons this week, or this season, I should say. But again, we're recording this before Monday's game. Unless something catastrophic happens in Miami, I think Tua probably is one of those that is fringy quarterback one play with all these guys on bye.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, looking at all the streaming options here, kind of going down the list. Trevor Lawrence versus Kansas City, nope. Matt Stafford versus San Francisco. He actually had a pretty good game, and that Rams offense is looking competent, so maybe. But yeah, the two streaming options that stood out for me are Tua at Carolina and Jackson Dart at New Orleans at 24 and 23% rostered on Yahoo, respectively. Obviously, Tua could come out and lay an egg against the Jets. Even if he does do that tonight on Monday Night Football, he still has a great that can't take away from a great matchup here at Carolina. The only thing that would be an injury, which we know could happen with him, at any point. But yeah, Tua would be the streaming option because obviously the Dolphins haven't looked great, but the offense has shown flashes. They've put together drives here and there. There are weapons on that offense, and Tua can benefit from dumping it off to Achane and him taking it to the house. And of course, when you have Tyreek Hill, he's still a weapon even at his age. So overall, I think Tua tops the streamers this week here. I mean, I'm not touching
nobody
Sam
else
Darnold,
really,
Bryce
right?
Young, Cam Ward, Jake Browning, Carson Wentz. All those guys are kind of where we're at. But we do have some quick hitter 2-quarterback league items to discuss.
Yeah, and I think the big deal was with Lamar Jackson. Hamstring injury, of course, happens midway through the third quarter, I think early fourth quarter in that range. A lot of people would say the game was out of reach at that point. I'm a little surprised the Ravens would be willing to wave the white flag, given that makes them 1-3. And that's a tough spot to be in the AFC. But, I mean, if Lamar Jackson is unable to play, I mean, that's going to be a bigger deal for the Ravens moving forward. So if you're to say, let's punt a quarter, or let's see if we can say a game, and Lamar Jackson's still our quarterback moving forward, that gives the Ravens a better chance to make the postseason. But, man, I mean, this is going to be a tough spot to kind of monitor throughout the week.
I was watching that live, via Red Zone, of course, and it was just a weird situation overall with Lamar. Like, he was pulled from the game. Cooper Rush was in. He was sitting on the bench, but nobody was like attending to him. He was kind of pouting a little bit. The body language didn't look good. I mean, it was a 2 or 3 score game at the time, and so it wasn't over. But they waved the white flag pretty early in that one. And I don't know what was going on. There was some speculation that had the game been closer, he might have been in the game. Eventually, after he got pulled, they called it a hamstring injury, and maybe they eventually checked him out. But I didn't see medical staff with him initially, so I'm like, what the heck happened here? And no, it wasn't a bathroom break situation like we've seen. It was just a hamstring injury. So we'll see how he practices this week. Otherwise, it's Cooper Rush here. So I'm not necessarily worried about replacing Lamar Jackson yet, but it's one of those things that doing the show on Monday, we just don't know. So Cooper Rush, I guess for 2 quarterback leagues, he'll be out there.
Right.
Other than that, Mariota and Wentz both started again. Both of them lost, but Wentz at least had a pretty good passing yardage showing here. It looks like Jaden Daniels will be back week 5, so the Mariota experiment can end. JJ McCarthy probably won't be back. They're keeping him over in Europe, right? They got to go to the Tottenham Stadium after the
Correct.
Ireland.
Yep.
That's a hose job. I didn't realize that was happening even for the Vikings. But in any case, I couldn't see JJ McCarthy coming back. I imagine it's going to be Carson Wentz again this week. Obviously, we talked about Jackson Dart at length, and be on Dylan Gabriel watching Cleveland just because of Flacco. So that's the 2 quarterback league situation here. Yes, we got a question in the chat. Yes, Flacco is still the starter as far as we know now, but we're speculating that that's just kind of a matter of time.
Yeah, and I think they're overseas and then have a bye, the Browns, and it's possible they come back at that point. I might have the bye week wrong for the Browns, but I think Flacco plays this week. If you are Cleveland, there's really no reason to put any of those rookies out there yet, whether it be Gabriel or Stuart Sanders. You don't need to have them in that bad of a spot. And theoretically, if your team is still competing, they did get a win against the Packers, for example, that you would want the veteran in there. It is a matter of time in my mind. And I think in super flex leagues, 2 QB leagues, it's fine to speculate on Dylan Gabriel.
Yeah, the Browns don't have a bye until week 9 after the Vikings and in Europe this week. They're at Pittsburgh, who's 30 against opposing quarterbacks, versus Miami, who's 31, and at New England, that's 18. So if they did make a move, it would at least be a decent part of the schedule. But yeah, I'm not quite sure that move happens until after the week 9 bye. So, but be on watch. Maybe Flacco forces their hand. I mean, if he keeps, like I said, 7 of the last 8 quarters have been pretty ugly.
Yeah, exactly. We'll circle back to the running backs again, headlined by Woody Marks, but I know the chat's not happy with my Brashard Smith take. I'm adamant that is correct relative to that Chiefs backfield. We'll get to that in a second, though. Word from our sponsors, Chalkboard. Cash in on your NFL picks this season with Chalkboard. Simply choose more or less than your favorite player stats to win up to 5,000 times your money. For a limited time right now, new players get $20 free with no deposit required. Yes, you heard that right. 20 free just on sign up. See why over 1 million fans have already locked in with Chalkboard to turn their sports knowledge into cold, hard cash. I've been enjoying actually using them. We've been doing them on primetime games, so I'll have 2 Chalkboard tweets out later today on JB Fantasy Sports with the guys that I like. It's been pretty good the past 2 weeks. I think we've been pretty successful overall, but whether you're locking in the perfect slip with alternate lines, using the cash out feature to take your money and run, or hammering the daily promos like I have been, today's your chance to win up to $40,000 on a single entry. Stop sitting on the sidelines. Get into the game with Chalkboard Fantasy Sports, now available in 30-plus states. Download Chalkboard today and use promo code ROTONFL. That's code ROTONFL, RotoNFL, to get 20 free with no deposit required. We had talked about our top 5 list to begin the show. Woody Marks is going to be the headliner. I think the top waiver wire pickup for a lot of folks. He in my mind, has usurped Nick Chubb in the Texans backfield. And even if we think Woody Marks is a good pass catcher, we don't know if that's going to happen within that Texans offense. It does not matter. I think Woody Marks is very clearly the best guy to go ahead and roster for this group of running backs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. Woody Marks at the very top of our list. If you want analysis, in my case, for Kendre Miller as well, and we discussed Kenneth Gainwell, you can rewind to the very top of the show here, because those are my top 3: Woody Marks, Kendre Miller, Kenneth Gainwell. Now, I've got a handful of guys that are kind of quick hitters, spec ad type guys that can be other running backs in deeper formats. Are you ready to get to those guys?
Yeah, let's go for it. Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, so the first guy I put down here was Tajay Spears. Again, this is a spec ad. I don't know how much you want of this Titans offense at all, but he'll be due to come off IR soon. I know he was kind of fringe on whether he was going to go on IR or not. So he's 32% rostered. A lot of managers had to make a call to drop him at some point, especially if he didn't have an IR spot. So he's someone that could come and be a little impactful in PPR format. So he's interesting there. Another spec ad I had was Blake Corum. He's only 28% rostered. We talked about Blake Corum quite a bit last week or in previous weeks when the running backs were a lot more thin. Didn't necessarily have a great rushing line this week, but he still had a handful of carries. What do you have, 9 carries or something along those lines? I didn't write that down. But anyway, Kyren Williams has actually seen his rush share, the percentage of carries by the team that go to him, it's declined each week of the season, culminating in a season low 59.1% in week 4. So Blake Corum continues to cut into that workload. Got to be frustrating for Kyren Williams owners, but Blake Corum is becoming, having some standalone value there. And of course, more than just a handcuff, we say at this stage here.
Yep.
And then really getting into the weeds, I wrote down Xavier Scott for PPR leagues. He's not really getting carries for Minnesota, but he did catch 6 of his 8 targets, and he was tied with Jordan Addison for the second on the team. Obviously, Jefferson's going to dominate the targets there in Minnesota.
Junk time touchdown was involved in that very last drive, or didn't matter at all. Like, I think that's inflated numbers, but and I also made the case they have a bye next week. And then the Eagles, I think, the week after, and then Aaron Jones is back. Yep. So if you're picking up Xavier Scott, it literally is for 1 week to possibly play.
Exactly.
That's not, you don't really need to go that direction.
Yeah, exactly. So I know we wanted to mention Justice Hill. I kind of called him I wrote down garbage time hero right here. He actually outsnapped Derrick Henry 32-21. I think a ton of that was game flow with the Ravens putting the backups in middle of the third quarter, but there might be some standalone value here. Justice Hill is a different kind of back, and he's going to get some touches. He definitely warrants some touches after what he did here. And with Derrick Henry struggling with the fumbles a little bit, and we'll see where this goes. I still think this is Derrick Henry's backfield through and through, and in most games, maybe we'll see. The Ravens are going to have better game flow than they have the first 4 weeks of the season, so it'll be Henry's, but you could do worse than throwing Justice Hill in a lineup and hoping it's one of those weeks where he busts off a big play.
Yeah, I think I'm more annoyed. Like, Justice Hill would have been a perfect best ball guy, because there are going to be instances where Hill's going to get a 20-point day. You're not getting it right in redraft, unless you're Jake, who always gets these things correct. It feels like most normal humans can't correctly guess when Justice Hill gets his massive games, but he'd been a great best ball candidate overall. Yeah, it's tough because again, if it's not Woody Marks at the top of that list, it is a lot of other guys out there. I don't find interest in Kendre Miller any different than Blake Corum, for example. Like that's the utility I have for Kendre Miller relative to Blake Corum, but others are going to think it's different with the Saints and possibly trading Alvin Kamara. So let's get to the receivers before.
I had just two more quick ones.
Sorry. Yep.
Sorry to stall here. Mari DiMercato, only 11 fewer snaps than Trey Benson. I think it was largely because the Cardinals having long down and distance, and that, of course, being DiMercato's bread and butter. Trey Benson actually worked really well as a pass catcher, but DiMercato did catch the touchdown. And one other thing that got on my radar, I think it was Ted in the chat that mentioned there might be a Miles Sanders injury in Dallas. So
okay, stop. You're just so ready for Jaden Blue. Your dynasty teams are so eager, Jake.
There's still like 2 leagues where I haven't cut him in yet. So, I've got my exposure off. But, hey, throwing that out there because who knows what's going on here.
I don't mind it, actually, because I did see Sanders limp off in that third quarter, I think, against the Packers. And if this is as bad of a defense as it sure looks like through the early portion of the season, there will be times where a pass-catching running back matters, and it can't just be Javonte Williams doing that sort of stuff. So you're right. I mean, that's fair, even though I know you're just annoying me discussing the Jaden Blue stuff as often as it feels like you are. You have a Jaden Blue agenda, Jake. It's very clear with that.
Yeah, I guess so. And it will come to fruition at some point.
Let's take a quick break here with Blue Wire, and we'll be back momentarily. Okay, talk about the receivers at the top of the list. We had Wan'Dale Robinson. We had Romeo Doubs among that group. I had made the argument even for Darius Slayton, although I guess not expanded further. Darius Slayton's always been a big play specialist for the Giants for his basically entire career. I think if there's more volume in that passing attack now open, not just to Wan'Dale Robinson, Slayton can have more schemed targets. Kind of think about how we were talking about Tyquan Thornton last week with the Chiefs, and it didn't work out, obviously, because Xavier Worthy came back from a dislocated shoulder.
Thornton goes back down to cut territory, by the way.
He does. But the concept is that
he came back quickly, and then, of course, we've got Rashee Rice coming in down the road.
Yes.
Yeah, Thornton is throw it up and hope for it. But yeah, after the Giants receivers, after Dobbs, there's really no standout names. I have a couple of quick hitters that are maybe worth discussing. I don't know if you want to do either of them at length, Joe. We've ran pretty heavy on time.
Let's let the Cowboys first, right? Jalen Tolbert catches that 38-yard pass. That was an insane throw, and even better catch by Tolbert. Otherwise, would have had a basically non-existent day, which we talked about. I thought Kevontae Turpin would be used more, and he wasn't. And what I don't know, Jake, maybe you have an idea, or you have at least a way to have the conversation, was that the Packers defense being so exploitable on the outside and the boundaries that Turpin, being largely a slot receiver, didn't need to be used? Or is that something that we can see in the future where Turpin is actually not the guy that gets utilized very much at all?
Yeah, I mean, Turpin's kind of the guy that you pick up and desperately hope for he breaks a big play touchdown. But for all intents and purposes, Jalen Tolbert was the wide receiver 2 in Dallas with CeeDee Lamb out. 6 targets, his 4 catches for 61 line, helped by the big play you mentioned. That's not a great line, given that this game was a total shootout. But
correct.
This isn't the first time the Cowboys got in a shootout, and it won't be the last, the way that defense has been playing. But Tolbert, like I said, he's wide receiver 2. He ran the second most routes after Pickens and was second to Pickens in targets. Of course, the tight end Jake Ferguson had 7 here. So if you had to pick a wide receiver 2 out of this bunch, it's Tolbert, but it's not a very confident start by any means.
And then the Niners playing on Thursday, that's going to be a really interesting situation. Ricky Pearsall makes a tremendous catch in that loss to the Jaguars. I think it's the second quarter. Tries to play once, then says he feels instability in his knee, done for the rest of the game. Niners play Thursday. Juwan Jennings has been dealing with 15 other injuries. George Kittle's not back yet. So if you can correctly guess, and this is a perfect Jake special, between Kendrick Bourne and Demarcus Robinson, one probably score a touchdown. Robinson coming off suspension, Kendrick Bourne re-signing with the Niners after a 3 or 4 years away from the team. I think one actually probably is going to be a fantasy relevant guy here Thursday. I just don't know which one it's going to be.
Yeah, I'm going to go Kendrick Bourne just based on snap counts alone because he played 43 compared to 24 for Robinson. I think Robinson is maybe the better red zone threat, but I think Bourne could be a big play threat. And yeah, Pearsall, you never want to hear instability in your knee
right.
From anyone. I started trying to scoop up Pearsall shares late, just watching how dialed in on him Brock Purdy was in
Mm-hmm.
the preseason, and that hasn't necessarily changed. But we do have some breaking news on that to a degree. I think since our show started, Kyle Shanahan said Monday that the team's initial belief is that Pearsall is dealing with a quote minor PCL injury. So hopefully it won't be too bad. He said, there's a lot going on. Obviously, I would be pretty shocked if Pearsall plays in the Thursday night football game at this point. We
Right.
know Kittle's still out until at least week 6. And Juwan Jennings was also, he was coming off the injury.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently Juwan Jennings is up in the air for Thursday night. Now, we got that note this morning, too. Again, another note since this show started. So he sat out since week 3. He retook the field, only got 4 targets, and then, of course, took a nasty shot to the ribs. Had to leave the game and was reevaluated, came back into the game. And then, of course, Brock Purdy is still managing his toe soreness. So it's a mess in San Francisco, but in a last man standing type situation, I think Kendrick Bourne gets into this mix, and maybe DeMarcus Robinson too. You don't feel great about your fantasy week throwing one of those guys out in a Thursday night football game, to be honest, but it's going to be a choice that you have to make. I think you only do that if you were starting Pearsall and counting on Pearsall, and Pearsall gets ruled out, then you throw one of those guys as a reasonable pivot because someone's going to get 8 targets, and it's probably one of those 2. So, I think my slight lean is Kendrick Bourne because he's already on the field more anyway, but I can very much see where you're coming from with DeMarcus Robinson.
Yeah, or if you're like me in our Dynasty League where I have Mike Evans, Terry McLaurin, and then Jaden Reed, I will likely have to start one of the DeMarcus Robinson or Kendrick Bournes. I will get it incorrect. If I was Jake, I would certainly get it correct. But yes, and I know Uncle Ted mentions Luke McCaffrey. Luke McCaffrey had 2 catches this week, scored a touchdown on the first quarter, otherwise didn't do anything. In fact, really good return man, almost to the point where the Commanders probably should be protecting McCaffrey and have him do more return stuff and not be more involved as a pass catcher. I think Jalen Lane, the rookie, does just fine as well, too. McCaffrey's name, at least to mention. I think people care more because he's Christian McCaffrey's brother and nothing really to do as a receiver, but it is what it is with McLaurin out for whatever duration of time that's going to be because he saw a specialist for a quadriceps injury last time, too. So, yeah, it's tough if you're missing a lot of these stud guys. Unfortunately, there hasn't been one that emerges because of that. I do think a Wan'Dale Robinson or Darius Slayton's the closest to that with Malik Nabers, assumedly done for the rest of the season.
Technically, with Noah Brown out and Terry McLaurin out, Chris Moore kind of became wide receiver too.
Correct.
Debo let him in snaps. Honestly, I'm not really interested in picking up Chris Moore outside of a total desperation play because I think McCaffrey and the tight ends, especially Ertz, are going to get a lot of those targets. Ertz becomes a more attractive option with more volume to go around, and Jaden Daniels possibly coming back. So I guess that's how I'm looking to handle this.
Who's the Titans receiver last year that scored on very little volume, like 8 straight weeks in a row? Okay, that's what Luke McCaffrey is to me. Okay. So cool. If you in the chat or listening along are only hoping for touchdowns, and we'll eventually get that going if Terry McLaurin comes back, Luke McCaffrey makes sense. If you are normal like me and never get those things correct, fine. I mean, then I would McCaffrey is not of interest to me.
Yeah, generally I prefer a 4-catch floor to a 1 in 10 shot of a touchdown.
Correct. One final word for sponsors for the tight ends and defense section here. Elevate your game with Ultimate Sports Contest Mega Sports Progressive. Dive into a world of excitement with 3 progressive jackpots and a chance to win big every week and every month. We're rewarding 1,500 lucky winners, distributing over $50,000 in monthly prizes on Mega Sports Progressive. All you do is answer 15 daily sports props. Add up your correct responses for the week's cash prize and tally the week's total for huge monthly cash rewards. Mega Sports Pro makes it fun and easy to join, and it's a thrilling opportunity to be part of a growing community of sports enthusiasts. Sign up today and unlock a chance to win big every day, every month, and every week. Sign up for free, no commitments, no credit cards. Your first 9 days of play are free. Visit megasportspro.com today. All right, the tight end position I had mentioned in the article. Kyle Pitts actually under 50% rostered. Cole Kmet gets 9 targets because Cole. I know. Kyle Pitts under.
And I see Pitts at 66%. He's only 25% in diamond leagues, but
maybe that was a change when I was checking Sunday night as opposed to Monday morning.
Pretty big jump, even with first come first serve. Because I remember thinking like, okay, Pitts is actually starting to look like what people thought he was 3 years ago, but he's definitely above that threshold of being rostered.
And the Falcons at a bye. Maybe it's people that are cutting the bye week player and then picking up one of these Monday guys, like the shuffling of whatever. I mean, if Pitts is available, go ahead and check it out. But I don't think he normally is. And then,
I don't know if that 3D chess is super common though, enough to affect the ownership.
Maybe you're right. Maybe not. Cole Kmet gets 9 targets. I think literally I counted 3 were direct Caleb Williams yelling, because Max Crosby was coming at him. He just threw at his feet. So 9 targets is what it is, but at least 3, and I can absolutely point to the film, at least 3 were because Max Crosby might have actually killed Caleb Williams if he got there. So no Colston Loveland. Of course, the Bears also on bye too.
Yeah, so Kmet, definitely gets into that conversation this week just based on volume alone, especially without Loveland. I threw Elijah Arroyo on the list here, just 2 of 4 targets for 44 yards, nothing special there. But he did have career highs, granted 4-week career highs in route participation and target share. So that's very interesting.
AJ Barner gets the touchdown.
Yes, and then AJ Barner gets the touchdown. If Arroyo got that touchdown, we'd be having a very different conversation right now.
Probably.
So it's crazy how one thing can impact that. I think you have to look at Tommy Tremble. I mean, you're not super excited about the Carolina offense here, but Jatavion Sanders is likely out multiple weeks with his ankle injury. And Tommy Tremble was 71% route share, 25% target share. So he was interesting there too. We talked about the Giants receivers. In the absence of Nabers, there are more targets to go around. Maybe that's a nod for Theo Johnson. He caught 3 of his 5 targets for 17 and a score. It was basically a designed goal line play for him, one of those Travis Kelce-like shovel passes, if I remember that correctly. So the fact that they're scheming him a little bit and there might be more targets to go around helps. We're still kind of on Oronde Gadsden to a degree.
Yep.
Rose to 50% route participation this week. Still only 3 targets here, but the behind-the-scenes stats are looking like he's on the rise. And then we had talked about Isaiah Likely a little bit last week. Again, this whole Ravens-Chiefs game was just weird. Weird game script for the Ravens here. But Likely returned, had 50% route participation, but he had no targets, whereas Mark Andrews had a season-high target share. So who knows what the heck's going on over there. I'm not sure Likely is a plug-and-play option, even though I did in my Kittle league because things were going down. But guys like Hunter Henry, Zach Ertz, they're kind of scooped up now, if you've been listening to the show. So this is what you're looking at here for week 5.
Evan Ingram's probably available. We'll have to see tonight as of this recording. We don't know if he actually does anything for the first time all year. I have my doubts, but this should be a good matchup against the Bengals defense, which has been very exploitable. Brenton Strange gets some volume from Jacksonville. Not somebody I'm super interested in because they don't really score touchdowns or look for Strange in the red zone. It is what it is. Overall, that's going to be, I think, kind of a mundane tight end group, and I would rather speculate on the Gadstons of the world in the same way we did Harold Fannin earlier this year, and Fannin could still pop with Dylan Gabriel eventually starting. We've had a few questions related to defenses, Jake, so I guess we'll spend a minute or 2 on that, but we'll head out for the rest of the show afterwards.
Yeah, I looked at the list, and it's really not super great overall here. The 2 that stood out a little bit, and again, when I'm looking at streaming defenses, I'm looking at, home team if possible, low over-under, and obviously the opponent here. So the 2 that fit this bill are the Indianapolis Colts. They're only 22% rostered on Yahoo. Obviously, as a team, they've outperformed expectations by a mile, even though, with this week's results. But they're home against the Raiders. We saw Geno Smith being a turnover machine against the Bears this past week. So maybe you look at the Colts. The other one, again, it's not a great week for streamers. You're probably going with your guys, but Arizona is only 17% rostered, and they get the Titans at home. And Cam Ward is coming off, a 10 for 26 game. And the Titans just is the offense just
they've been bad.
Iomenor actually had an okay outing, despite the Cam Ward line, but there's not a whole lot of confidence in this Tennessee offense. So both of these picks are, again, not based on me thinking the Indy or the Arizona defense are particularly good, but they're at least at home, and they have reasonable or even below average opponents here. So if you do have to if you have to plug and play a little bit or have been, we roll with one of those.
I would play the Giants defense against the Saints. Don't mind that. I think that's certainly a possibility as well, too. Some people in the chat were talking about Jacksonville. I think they forced 3+ turnovers now in 3 weeks. I do not think that happens against the Chiefs. So I'm not playing the Jaguars against the Chiefs despite all the turnovers. You guys can do that if you want to, and it'll probably work out well because you're doing it, not me. But as soon as I play Jacksonville,
the Jags against the Chiefs.
What?
What, the Jags against the Chiefs? Why would
Yeah.
anyone want to do that?
Well, because the Jags have the top fantasy defense right now because of the turnovers that they generate,
I guess,
which is
yeah.
totally not a
they're
fluky stat.
6% rostered, but if you put your Monday Night Football hopes into that, yeah, that's tough. I mean, the Giants, I guess, sure, they could have made my list here, but just being on the road in general knocked them below those other.
I'd play the Rams too on a short week against a really banged up Niners team if the Rams are available at that threshold. But yeah, I mean, it's gonna be tough.
Actually, yeah, that's a good one. They're a little higher rostered at 31%, but you have a home team, all the San Francisco injuries, and yeah, 31% rostered short week. It'll be a low over under game. Yeah, go for it. I mean, the Rams defense. At 31%, I might put them above. Yeah. Actually, I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna put them above the Colts and the Cardinals this week, and have the Rams be the recommended one.
All right. Well, I'll take the Colts.
If you get Mac Jones with no receivers,
I think Brock Purdy's playing, and I think he'll be fine. But still, Brock Purdy with no receivers is a touchdown and turnover waiting to happen.
They still have McCaffrey though, so yeah.
Okay, that is it for us in this edition of the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast. Thank you guys for listening. I'll have the article posted on the site. YouTube 15 gets you 15% off. Chance to go ahead and look at that article, as well as a bunch of the other content we use. The box score breakdown that Jerry Donabini does. Fantastic job that normally gets published Tuesday. Lots of NFL content throughout the whole week. And of course, if you have bye weeks going on, you could reach out to myself or Jake at RotoJake at JB Fantasy Sports on Twitter. Happy to help you guys out with any roster decisions you might have. We'll be back in next week. Thanks, everyone.